it doesn't matter whether God exists or not. Is this a valid statement to make? And does it in fact matter whether God exists or not? Many times on the streets, many times reaching out over the years, I would actually hear this, and probably more and more. I think we're maybe coming to the end of this particular way of thinking at the moment. Not the end, but not as frequently as we did hear it. But many times you would hear this statement roll out from people, and they just say, it doesn't really matter to me whether God exists or not. I don't really care. And then what this would often lead to then is usually apathy and indifference. People are claiming like, it doesn't really matter whether it exists or not to me, it doesn't make any difference to my life. And often the common thing I would hear, many conversations I had with people, and no matter what I said, it was like, heaven, yeah, it doesn't matter if I just die, we don't go anywhere, or we go to heaven. It doesn't matter if there's a right way to live. It doesn't matter if Jesus existed or not. And the reason I share this today is because when you meet this, it's like, I think when you first hear it, you're taken aback by it because it's quite surprising. And then the more and more you hear it, then you realize this is quite a common thought. And then people are quite indifferent. And how do I move forward with this? How do I deal with this? Somebody's seeming apathy and indifference to whether God exists or not. But here's the thing I'm going to say today. It obviously does matter, and I'm going to say why it matters today. It very much matters, and I think there's a problem. There's a problem every time I hear, again, unless somebody's researched it to the nth degree, which is very unusual, but 99% of the time that I hear someone saying that it doesn't matter whether God exists or not, here's the issue. I believe in most of those cases, people have hedged their bets. So what they've actually done is, they've opened up their mind to the reality that there's some kind of spirituality out there. There's probably, I hear this a lot, there's something out there. There's someone out there. There's something outside of my control. They'll acknowledge that. And then when you suggest God, it's like, well, I don't really know. It doesn't really matter. But what often happens is they live a moral life. They live a life that is semi-spiritual at times. God's got a little place in there more often than not somewhere. They maybe do attend church now and again. They do pray now and again. They do try to treat people well. They're aware of some kind of objective standard that they're kind of sort of meeting. In other words, if there is a God and I'm not living perfectly right now, well, at least I've hedged my bets. I've kind of kept this God in my life to some extent. And that's what I often meet. And I think the reason why they have came to this conclusion is that they've never played out the alternatives, if you like. They've never played out what it would actually mean if God didn't exist and God wasn't there. They haven't really thought this through. And obviously, what is that? Well, that's the belief very often of atheism, that the concrete belief that you're saying you don't believe there's a God out there. And why have people concluded that they don't know whether God exists or not? Well, they haven't played out the realities of him not existing. And that's the thing that really helped me. What is the reality of God not actually being there? Is that something that we could even imagine? And to be honest, I don't think it is. And the reason why I think God does exist is to live like that. You can't actually live like that. So in other words, atheism played it out. If we play that out, what does that mean? It means that there's no objective meaning, value, or purpose to life. There's no objective meaning, value, or purpose to life. As Richard Dawkins says, we're accidental machines. We came about in order to propagate DNA. The universe is going to burn up. It's going to have heat death. There's no longer going to be any energy left. And it's going to be the same in our lives as well. We're going to die just the same way as the universe is going to die. And there was no real purpose for our birth. There's no real purpose behind our lives. And there's also, we're going to just die and be forgotten. And everyone's going to die and be forgotten. There is actually no objective meaning, value, or purpose to life at all. And the only meaning, value, and purpose your life does have is the subjective one that you've come up with and fashioned in order to make life meaningful. That's, without God, there is no objective meaning, value, or purpose. Life is unlivable because people have to create a subjective meaning, value, or purpose for themselves. It simply does not exist outside of God. And I like the way it was put in a book I've been reading recently, which says, if God does not exist, then life is objectively meaningless, but man cannot live consistently and happily knowing that life is meaningless. So in order to be happy, he pretends life is meaning, but this, of course, is entirely inconsistent, for without God, man and the universe or without any real significance. The reality is, the reason why it matters whether God exists or not, because if he doesn't, life is unlivable. Atheism is in fact unlivable, and people never end up living that way themselves in their own life.